As we stated in the beginning, that an array was a special kind of an object. So it is something like a list of variables. What I mean by that is that when we group the variables together, we list all the variables one after the other as one unit that forms a list. Although it is possible to group a list of variables together, however, it is not allowed to group a list of variables of different data types. So therefore, if you want to create an array of any variables, then make sure that these variables have the same data type. So an array officially is defined as a collection of items of the same data type. So we could have an array of integers, we could have an array of long integers, we could have an array of doubles, we could have an array of floats, we could have an array of strings, even we could have an array of objects, which we will cover later. Now, how to define an array of the same data type? This is the syntax we use to define an array for 7 double variables. If we want to define a single variable, usually we type the data type followed by the name of the variable, and if we know the value of the variable at the time of the declaration, we write equal followed by this value. Now, if you want to create an array with 7 variables of type double, this is how you do it syntactically in Java. Instead of typing just double, follow double by opening and closing empty square brackets. Then write the name of the array, followed by equal, followed by the command new, followed by the keyword double, between square brackets, the size of how many variables you want to define for this variable. As we mentioned before, that an array was a special kind of an object. So therefore, if you want to create an array, you have to write new and then specify how many elements you want to allocate for this array. And this is the syntax that we are going to follow to define an array of any data type. For example, if I want to define an array or if I want to declare an array of 100 integers, syntactically how to define such array, we write int followed by empty square brackets, followed by the name of the array, followed by equal, followed by new, followed by int, and followed by 100 as the size of the integers in this array. After declaring the 7 variables of type double as an array, now how this array is represented inside the memory. We may illustrate the array inside the memory as a block of double variables listed one after the other, such that all variables are labeled by the group name, which is the name of the array, and each variable inside the group is assigned a location. This location is called an index. This is similar to strings. Remember that for strings, the first character was assigned an index 0, the next one was assigned 1, and etc. until the end of the string. Similarly for arrays. For arrays, if you have an array of a certain data type, then the first variable in the array always has index 0. And the last variable in the array will be an index, the size of the array, -1. So now we are defining 7 variables. So therefore, the first variable is at index 0, and the last variable is at index 6. When an array is created, then by default, all the elements of this array are initialized to 0. So remember that array indices are always begin at index 0, similar to strings. After knowing how to declare an array for any data type for a certain number of elements, now we need to ask ourselves how to access these elements for reading and writing. Remember that when we define an array, it's like a group of variables of the same data type. Each variable inside the array has an index. The first variable is at index 0, and the last variable is at index, the size of the array, -1. To access the array, we refer to these elements inside the array first by the name of the array, and then by its location inside the array, which is by the index. As an example, after declaring the array with 7 variables, 7 double variables, the system will initialize all these variables to 0. Now, in this syntax, we are writing the name of the array followed by an index enclosed between square brackets. When you write the name of the array followed by an index enclosed in square brackets, then the system will treat it as a single ordinary double variable. You can read it, you can assign a value inside it, you can print it, and so on. So here we are in fact assigning the value 30.5 into the variable that is at index 0. So where is the variable inside temp that is at index 0? This is the variable. Its current value is 0, so when we execute this statement, then 30.5 will replace 0. In this statement, we are reading the value at index 0, which is 30.5. We add 5 into it, and then we save the result into the variable that is at index 1. Therefore, the value of 0 will be replaced by the value 30.5. We are printing temp1. Temp is the name of the array and 1 is the index. So in fact, the print statement is printing the value of the variable at index 1, and this value is equal to 35.5. Therefore, println will print 35.5 on the output screen. After getting an idea of what is an array, let us go back to our opening problem. If we only want to compute the average, then we need a single variable that will read temperatures one at a time. However, if we want to print the temperatures that are above the average, then we need to pass over the data twice. The first pass, we compute the average, and at the same time, we need to save them in the memory. The second pass, we go over the temperatures one by one. Any of these temperatures greater than the average, we print it on the screen. Since we need to pass over the data more than once, then we have to save the data in the memory for the second pass. And this is why we need an array. So first we define an array. Then we read the temperatures inside the array by using a for loop. At the same time, we compute the average. And then we display the average on the screen. In the second pass, we create another for loop that will go over the elements inside the array. We go over the temperatures inside the array one by one. And then we check each of these temperatures. If any of these temperatures above the average, we simply print it. Let us write the code in JGrasp to understand the details of the code clearly. This is the Java program that computes only the average for the 7 temperatures. By reading the temperatures one at a time, we accumulate these temperatures into a variable called sum, and after we finish, we divide the sum over 7 and we display the average on the screen. Now, if we want to find how many temperatures are above the average, so we need to go back to the temperatures. As we said that first we have to create an array. So here we will say create an array for 7 double variables. To do that, you write double with empty square brackets, and then we will call it temp, which stands for temperature, equal new, then we say double, and between square brackets we write how many variables we want to allocate for the array. So now we are defining 7 double variables. When the system creates these variables, it will initialize them to 0. Next, we want to read the temperatures and save them inside the array. Remember that the array, it allocates the variables one after the other. The first one is at index 0, the next one is at index 1, and so on. Here we have a loop. So for the loop, we will use the loop variable for the index. We know that the index starts from 0, and it will go up to the last index, which is 6. So therefore, we write less than, so we have to say index less than 7, but it will never reach 7. and here we say index plus a plus. So the for loop, inside the for loop, index will go 0, 1, 2, 3, up to 6. In each iteration, we are reading from the user, and now this value, we should save it into the array. So here we are reading next, and how to save it into the array, we will write the name of the array, which is temp, and we have to specify the index where we want to save the current temperature, and we will depend on the loop index variable. We will say index equal to next. Now this loop will only save, but we need to save it at the same time. We need to accumulate it into the variable sum. Therefore, after saving, then we have to accumulate it into sum. So we write sum equal sum plus, and then we write temp between bracket index. And since temp index is equal to next, we can also use next here. But here we are doing two things. The first thing, we are saving the value into the array, and at the same time we are adding the temperature into the summation. In the next iteration, when index changes to 1, then the next temperature that we are going to read from the user will be saved at temperature 1. And then in the next iteration, we are going to read the temperature at index 2. So as long as the index is changing from 0 to 6, then the temperature will be saved at that index. At the same time, it will be added to sum. After we exit the loop, we compute the average and we print the average on the screen. And this represents the first pass of the data. So the first pass, we save the temperatures into the array. At the same time, we compute the average. Let us write a comment for us, and then we say here, the first pass over the temperature values. Now I will copy the comment, and I will write down here, the second pass, and I forget to write pass in the first comment. The second pass over the temperature values, we will do the same. We will create a for loop that will iterate over the temperatures inside the array. We will print the message system.out.println the temperatures are, and then we will follow this message by saying that the temperature is below the average, above the average, or equal to the average. Now we will write the for loop. We will say for integer index is equal to 0, and this index is less than 7, index plus a plus. So the value of index will be equal to 0, 1, 2, 3, up to 6, but not up to 7. Inside the loop, for each value of index, we will check the temperature or the value at that index. If it is below average, we display that the temperature is below average. If it is above the average, we display the temperature above average. And if it is equal to the average, we display that it's the average. So we will say if. So we will say if the temperature at index is below average, then we will display a message system.out.println. First we will print the temperature TMP index, followed by the message below the average. Otherwise, we will check if it is above the average. So we will write the same code, copy it, and we will paste it here. But we will change the condition into above, and we display the message above instead. Finally, we display the message that says that the temperature is the average. So again, we will copy this message, we paste it, and then we will write that it is the average. This will complete the code inside the for loop. So the for loop will start from index 0 until 6. Every time we check for temperature index, if it is below average, we display that the temperature is below average. And if it is above average, we display above the average. Otherwise, we display the average. This completes the code. Let us now compile it and check if there is any syntax error. There are no syntax error. Now is the time to run the program. Let us test now the program. We run the program. Now first it is asking to enter the 7 temperatures. The first temperature is 34.5, the second one 67.8, third one let's say 34.8, let's say fourth one is 59.0, fifth 23.8, sixth 45.8, let us put a negative number 9.0 and we press enter. So as you see that it is printing that the temperatures are 34.5 is below the average because the average is 36, 67.8 is above the average because the average is 36, and none of these temperatures is equal to the average. To see how the system creates an array and how we read from the user the temperatures and save them into the array, we are going to trace the program using JGrasp Canvas. We will run the canvas now, and then we will step into the program, and we are at line number 9. Now the array is created. To see the array, we drag the array into the canvas. Now this is the state of the array when it is created by the system. Notice that all the values inside the array are initialized to 0. And see, they are represented by a group or a list of variables pointed by the name of the array because the array is an object. We will display a message on the screen, and we are asking the user to enter the 7 temperatures. Then we will go and turn one by one. So first now we are reading the first temperature. So we will give 34.5 and we press enter. And then this value will be saved into temperature at index. So let us see what is the current value of index. We will drag it and put it inside the canvas so that to follow what is its current value. Then it will save the value that is in next. Also I will put next into the canvas to see its current value. So this value 34.5 will be saved at index 0. And see now it is saved at index 0 and the first value inside the array is 34.5. In the next iteration, notice also that it has saved the value into sum. So if I want to see the current value of sum, also I can drag it into the canvas to see its current value. In the next iteration, the value of index will change to 1. And again, we are going to read another temperature from the user. Let us this time put 67.8 and press enter. This value 67.8 will be first saved into the array at index 1. See, it is saved now inside the array at index 1, and then it will be added to sum. In the next iteration, we will read the next temperature 89.0. Similarly, it will be saved into the array at index 2 and it will be added to sum. Read the next temperature 56.9, save it at index 3, add it to summation, go for the next temperature, we will put negative number and save it into the array at index 4, add it to summation, and then we go for the next temperature. We will say 32.9. It will be saved at index 5. It will be added to sum. And for the last iteration, we will put 12.9. It will be saved at the last index. Notice here. And then we will add it to sum and we will exit the loop. After exiting the loop, then we are computing the average. If I want to see the average, I can drag its variable into the canvas. And this is the average of the temperatures. Next, we will go into the second loop. And in the second loop, this is the second pass. We will go over the temperatures inside the array one at a time by using the index. In the beginning, index is 0, so we are referring to the first temperature in the array. Since it is below the average, then it will execute the if statement, will go inside, will print that it is below the average. When index becomes 1, we are referring to the second element, and the second element 67 is above the average. So it will go to the else if statement and will execute the statement by printing that it is above the average. Now for the third temperature, it is above the average. It will print that it is above the average. And at the temperature at index 3 is 56, also greater, it will print that it is above the average. And then for fifth temperature, the index is 4, the temperature is below the average, so it will print below the average. And when index is equal to 5, which is for the sixth temperature, and it is 32.9, which is less than 40, it will print below the average. And finally, for the last temperature, which is at index 6, it is a 12.9 below the average, so it will print below the average, and then it will exit the loop. After running the program, this is a sample of an output. First, a message is displayed on the screen to enter the 7 temperatures. Then the user will type the 7 temperatures one at a time. Then the program will display a message that the average is a 29.7428 based on these temperatures, and we'll have another loop that will go over the temperatures one by one, and any temperature above the average, it will display the temperature followed by the message above average, and any temperature below the average, it will display the temperature followed by the message below the average. Otherwise, it will display the temperature followed by is the average.